Welcome back to episode 4 of building an iron fence and driveway gate from the guys at Iron Fence Shop. Today we will be doing the very satisfying part of the project, actually installing the fencing onto our previously cemented in posts. As you can see here, everything has had time to cure and we've covered the cement with some of the dirt we took from the holes. To start, I'm measuring from the top of the post down to get the height at which the top rail of the panel will sit. And then from there, using a laser level that I courteously borrowed from my father, transferred that line from the first post to the rest. Here you'll see me using a speed square to take that one mark and transfer it all the way around the post, so I have a measurement on both sides. There are 3 key pieces to attaching these panels to our posts. What you are seeing here is the bracket that will attach the two together, the self-tapping 1/4" screw that will hold the bracket in place, and lastly the provided magnetic bit to drill everything home. For the first panel, you get to see a good example of what it's like when you have perfectly spaced posts. The panels are 8 feet long and these posts are spaced perfectly to fit. Here you'll see me using a combination of both a block of wood and a quick release clamp. The 2x4 used in this case is to bring the panel close to the correct height, and the clamp is used to hold the panel in place while I screw the bracket in. Here I'm using a hammer to lightly tap the panel into its final location, and then you'll see me using a punch to make a small mark in the metal. This mark gives the self-tapping screw a place to register and stop it from wandering as I drill it in. With self-tapping screws, you can never be too careful over tightening, as doing this will cause the metal to strip, losing all grip of the screw. Here you can better see me using the quick release clamp and a block of wood to both bring the panel up to the correct height and keep it exactly where I want it while I screw it in. Also to note, I'm not fully tightening any of these screws in place until I get all 4 on this panel in place. This allows me a little bit better of an adjustment as I try to get the fence panel perfectly plumb and level. If we did everything correct when setting these posts, they should already be plumb, and I could just register the brackets to the center of the post. But here I'm bringing out my 4-foot level just to be sure. Now you'll see me go back around and retighten everything, get it set in place. For the second and third panel, I had to shorten the distance between posts to meet the distance I had originally planned. There wasn't quite enough to cut an entire rung off the panel, so what you see me doing here is centering the panel between the posts and marking an even amount on both sides to cut off. This might not be the perfect way to do it, but I think it turned out pretty good in the end. To make the cut, I don my safety glasses and grab my angle grinder with a metal cutoff wheel. This process went pretty quick and the cuts came out pretty clean. And even though these edges will be covered by the brackets, I still took the time to file them down and make them come out smooth. For this, we just repeat the process on the other 3 ends of the rail until we get our desired length. Now you'll see me use this provided spray paint to close up any of the bare edges. And because I referenced the posts instead of using a tape measure and trying to measure and mark everything came out really tight and really nice and even. For this and the rest of the panels, everything was status quo. I would bring the panel to the post, center it, mark it, cut it, and hang it with the self-tapping screws and the simple brackets. The screws and brackets made this process go so fast, and the fact that I had pre-marked all of the tops of the panels, I was able to just hang it, plumb it, and move on to the next one. Now, I'd be lying to you if I wasn't most daunted for the next part coming up, hanging the man gate. As I get the gate closer, you can see one of my favorite parts about this is this U shape of reinforced metal they put around the edge so this gate will never sag with time. Here's the hardware they provide to hang the gate. First we have the hinges, we have the bolts that go through the hinge and post, and then we have the L bolts that go into the hinges and the gate itself. Now I'll start by marking the location of where I'm going to put the tops of the hinges using a square for reference. Then I will punch some holes and drill those holes through both sides of the post. The critical thing here I was focused on was making sure the drill was as level as possible so that bolt fit nice and neat through both sides of the post. Here you can see a closer look on how I am marking and centering that hinge. To be honest, the MVP of this whole process was the punch. It allowed me to never really wander with any of my drill bits or self-tapping screws and keep those holes nice and perfectly centered the whole time. Here again, you see me using some spray paint to clean up those bare edges so they will never rust. Now we have the super critical part, making sure we line up that gate and line the holes we're going to mark up perfectly with those hinges. As I've done this whole time, I've only ever used reference marks, not using a tape measure or anything like that, and then just transferring those marks with a square to get them exactly where I need. Again here, I'm just trying to make sure I'm drilling as perfectly planar with the gate as possible. I also started with the smaller drill bit before using the bigger drill bit, both provided by Iron Fence Shop, so that way I have a little bit easier of a time getting through that metal. Now for the most nerve-wracking part of this whole process, making sure that gate actually fit. The nice thing about these hinges is that there are two nuts that sandwich the gate, which gives it a little bit of an adjustability to it. You can tilt the gate left or right, you can move it left or right, which allows you to get that perfect fit. After installing the provided gravity latch, the gate came together. I'm pretty proud of this. Now we just get to do it all on the bigger scale and move on to the driveway gate. Now moving on to the flashy part, the driveway gate. Being the size that it is, this driveway gate was definitely a two-man job, hence why I had to call in some reinforcements. First thing we did was put the gate into place and chalk it up on some blocks. Tyler held it in place while I marked for the hinge locations. This being a larger piece that spans a wider area, we were sent some very heavy-duty hardware to hold it in place and keep it from sagging. The bolts being almost double the size of what we used on the main gate. Just like with the main gate, we started with the smaller bit and worked our way into the larger bit to give us the final diameter for the hole. Again, this entire process is pretty identical to what we did with the man gate, just on a bigger scale. Once we finally got the gate on, we were able to use the two provided nuts per hinge to sandwich that post and get the gate perfectly plumb and level. Well, that about wraps it up for the install. We finally have an enclosed yard and couldn't be happier. The next video in the series will be the last, as we will be installing an automatic opener for this driveway gate. Thanks for watching.